I am the daughter of a Chinese mother and a European American Jewish father. I was raised Jewish by my mom after my dad died when I was 6. As a child, I rarely thought about my racial or religious identities, and I never worried about the confusion they might cause others. I was proud of the few Chinese phrases I knew, and I was the most enthusiastic kid in my Hebrew school class. I didn't care that I was the only Asian kid at Hebrew school, or that I was the only one of my close friends that wasn't white. In middle school, I began to notice that I didn't know anyone else quite like me. I didn't look like anyone else at my temple, and I felt like I had nothing in common with the other Asian girls at school. Instead of feeling like I was part of two groups, I felt like I couldn't truly be part of either. These two parts of my identity seemed to take away from one another, leaving me with nothing. People, especially my classmates, seemed baffled by my identity. "How can you be Chinese and Jewish?" they would ask. "Aren't you supposed to take your mother's religion? Why'd you take your dad's religion if he isn't even around?" I didn't know how to answer. How could I explain why I was who I was? I wished that I could be simple, that I could fit into a nice, neat box like everybody else. One day in 8th grade, the vice principal called me down to her office. She was filling out demographic forms, and she wanted to know which box she should check on mine, Asian or white. I wanted her to check both, but she told me that I had to choose. Minutes passed, and I couldn't say a word. How could I choose between two equally important aspects of my identity? I felt my cheeks turning red, my palms growing sweaty. A lump of anger and shame began to build in my throat. I don't remember what I chose that day, but I remember that when I finally spoke, it took 3 tries to force a single raspy word from my throat. My voice sounded shaky and weak. Throughout high school, I continued to struggle with my identity. Once I started college, I avoided going to Temple on campus because of all of the stares I got, or imagined getting. I didn't join any of the Asian student groups because with my American and Jewish upbringing, I didn't feel like I belonged. I stopped talking and writing about what I was feeling. I wanted to be like everybody else, so I pretended like I was. Since I started as a team leader in June, Girls Leap's reflective curriculum, as well as its positive outlook and strength-based perspective, has allowed me to see myself in a new light. In training, we did an activity called the Individual Mandala, where we put on paper all of the things that make us us, who we are, what we value, our hopes, dreams, fears, and challenges. Looking at all the parts of my identity, good, bad, and conflicting, all laid out on one page, I began to see that each word I had written was essential to the person I was. As I write this story, I keep thinking back to one of the first and most frustrating rules I learned at Girls Leap. We were taught not to use the conjunction but when giving feedback, and ideally to cut it out of our everyday speech, because it negates whatever fact or sentiment precedes it. Looking back, I realized that for years, I've thought of my identity in terms of buts and contradictions. I thought of myself as Chinese but Jewish, small but strong, the words battling for dominance and challenging each other's validity. Creating my individual mandala has allowed me to begin thinking of myself in terms of ands. I am Chinese and Jewish, small and strong, shy and talkative, and just because these things may seem contradictory to others, doesn't mean they have to negate each other. Instead, they add to each other and build off of each other to make me who I am. Change doesn't happen all at once. Often, I still find myself longing to be like everyone else, or to simplify myself so that I make sense to others. I know now, though, that when I need to stand up for my identity again, I will be able to, because now I believe in it myself. Sometimes, I think back to that day in the vice principal's office, and when I do, I feel confident that if the same thing were to happen today, it would go very differently. Today, I would tell the vice principal that the choice she was forcing me to make wasn't right. I would tell her that every piece of my background, my heritage, myself, is equally important, and that I could never and will never choose between them. As I spoke, my voice would be loud, steady, and strong, because I know now that each and every piece of my identity is worth claiming and is worth defending.